Hello, my name is Marco Palmieri. I am an instructor of environmental health for the graduate program at the University of Connecticut Health Center. I will be narrating my PowerPoint presentation on food establishment inspections, identifying risk factors that cause foodborne illnesses. Foodborne illness can affect anyone and exists globally. In the United States, 1 out of 6 Americans become ill from food, causing around 3,000 deaths annually. Foodborne illness is responsible for 1/3 of all deaths worldwide and is especially devastating to young children. In the United States, restaurants are responsible for the vast majority of foodborne illness. Here are the top 5 pathogens causing foodborne illness in the United States, and as you can see, norovirus is the predominant organism. Since diarrhea, vomiting, or both are common symptoms for all 5 of these pathogens, diagnosis is often difficult. Identifying the food source implicated in the illness can also be challenging, as many different types of foods are often associated with each pathogen. Identifying the onset and duration of these illnesses is very important and is often a key factor in determining the focus of the investigation. According to the CDC, the following are the most frequently reported risk factors to foodborne illness. And as you can see, improper holding temperatures is the predominant risk factor. So, how do we reduce these risk factors? First, we must require food service employees receive proper food safety education and training, then conduct regular inspections of food service establishments, and of course, enforce food safety laws. In this presentation, I will identify some of the most common risk factors found during inspections of food service establishments. Let's start with improper holding temperatures. Risky foods are required to be maintained or held at certain temperatures to stop or at least slow the growth of these pathogenic organisms we mentioned before. So, what are these risky foods? Risky foods are called time temperature control for safety foods, or TCS foods for short. They are basically any food that contains any part of an animal, any cooked fruits or vegetables, and a few select raw plant-based foods. TCS foods must be held in safe zones. Cold TCS foods must be held at or below 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and hot TCS foods must be held at or above 135 degrees Fahrenheit. TCS foods held at temperatures in between 41 and 135 degrees Fahrenheit are considered to be in the danger zone. The danger zone is where pathogenic organisms survive and or grow the fastest. In order to verify whether foods are being held or cooked at proper temperatures, one needs specific food thermometers called probe thermometers. Food probe thermometers need to be properly cleaned and sanitized after each use. Inspectors must verify that refrigerators maintain TCS foods at or below 41 degrees Fahrenheit, and that freezers maintain frozen TCS foods at or below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Certain raw fish used for sushi or sashimi must be maintained at specific frozen temperatures for specific periods of time. Hot holding equipment such as hot buffet tables and soup crocks must maintain hot TCS foods at a minimum of 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's identify inadequate cooking issues. Different TCS foods contain different pathogenic organisms. Therefore, different TCS foods have different minimum required cooking or heat treatment temperatures. to kill these specific organisms. When cooking TCS foods, one must verify that the entire product is fully cooked by checking the interior temperatures in multiple spots. Otherwise, portions of the food may be undercooked. If the food is deliberately served raw or undercooked, the consumer must be informed of this and of the risks that are involved. This is called a consumer advisory. A consumer advisory includes a disclosure and a reminder. The disclosure identifies which food items are offered raw or undercooked. The reminder is a written statement that describes the health risks of consuming such raw or undercooked foods. Here is an example of a consumer advisory on a menu. The disclosure is an asterisk identifying the TCS food items that are offered raw or undercooked. In this case, it is the ground beef and the burgers. The reminder is the statement identified by the asterisk. The wording in this statement is fairly common and quite compelling, as it informs the consumer that consuming raw or undercooked meats, poultry, seafood, shellfish, or eggs, which may contain harmful bacteria, may increase your risk of foodborne illness or death, especially if you have certain medical conditions. Next, I will point out how poor personal hygiene can affect foods. Foods are often contaminated by food service workers who do not follow proper hygienic practices. For example, if hair isn't properly restrained with a hat, cap, net, or other means to eliminate hair-to-hand contact, hands or even gloved hands can become contaminated. Another example is if a food service worker has any cuts or open sores on their exposed skin that is not properly covered. And, of course, making sure that ill food service workers stay home, as infected food service workers can shed hundreds of thousands of pathogens on their feces that can be easily transmitted to food, even when good hand washing practices are used. Maintaining good hand hygiene is very important, so there needs to be an adequate number of hand wash sinks throughout the establishment to allow for employees to have easy access to wash hands. In this example, the faucet is activated by a foot pedal. Knowing when to wash hands is also important to eliminate cross-contamination. Food service employees are required to wash hands whenever there is a potential for cross-contamination. Hand washing is also required prior to donning gloves. Making sure hand wash sinks are accessible is an important part of the inspection. Hand washing sinks are to be used for hand washing only, but are often filled with dishes or blocked, as in these examples. Bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods is prohibited. Bare hand contact with TCS foods that are going to be fully heat-treated or cooked afterwards may be permitted by the health authority. Ready-to-eat foods are those foods that can be consumed as is, without having to go through heat treatment or secondary heat treatment process. Such foods are salads, breads, deli meats and sandwiches, any cooked or baked food items, beverages, ice, commercially processed foods, sashimi, and raw fruits and vegetables. Food service employees are required to stay home when experiencing any of these symptoms, so they can't contaminate food, food service equipment, or their fellow employees. Employees are required to notify their supervisors of their illness and symptoms. Management is required to notify the regulatory authority or health department if and when a food handler experiences vomiting and/or diarrhea, and the health authority must exclude that ill employee for at least 72 hours after their last bout of vomiting and/or diarrhea. Food service employees experiencing these symptoms are a hazard to the public, their fellow employees, and their workplace environment. They must be restricted from working in the food service operation and cleared by the health authority prior to returning to work. I will identify next how contaminated equipment is a risk factor to foodborne illness. It is expected that kitchens and food service equipment become soiled during certain periods of food preparation. It is also expected that those surfaces are cleaned and some even sanitized as often as necessary to prevent cross-contamination. All surfaces of food service equipment must be inspected to assure cleanliness. Old food residue can cross-contaminate other foods, hands, and surfaces with harmful organisms. There are two types of surfaces of food service equipment. There are surfaces that come in direct contact with food, such as the inside of an ice machine on the image to the left, since ice is food, and then those surfaces that do not come in direct contact with food, such as the inside of a refrigerator on the image to the right. Direct food contact surfaces are expected not only to be thoroughly cleaned, but also sanitized afterwards to kill the organisms. Gloved hands are a food contact surface as well, and gloves are not allowed to be washed. They must be changed. Knowing when to change them is very important. In the image to the left, the gloves are in contact with raw chicken and can't be used for any other purpose. The gloves must be removed, the hands thoroughly washed prior to donning the new gloves. Food service equipment must be properly washed with warm soapy water, rinsed free of any detergents, sanitized to kill pathogenic organisms, and then properly dried to prevent further growth of bacteria. There are two methods of dishwashing: manual and mechanical. Manual dishwashing is where one washes the items in a 3-bay sink with their hands using scrubbers, detergents, and chemical sanitizers. The setup of a 3-bay sink is highly regulated. The third or last bay of a 3-bay sink is reserved for sanitizing. Mechanical dishwashing is done automatically with a dishwashing machine. Detergents are automatically injected into the machine during the wash cycle, and depending on the type of machine, either a chemical sanitizer is injected during the rinse cycle or hot water is sprayed automatically on the surfaces, killing the organism. Chemical sanitizing is verified by using test strips to check the sanitizer's strength. Too weak a solution will not destroy pathogens. Too strong a solution can be poisonous. Hot water used for sanitizing must reach a minimum temperature of 165 or 180 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the type of machine. Thermometer gauges are required to verify the temperatures of the water. The last of the top 5 risk factors is food from unsafe sources. Food service establishments must use foods from an approved source. Produce from home gardens and foods prepared or canned in private homes are not permitted in commercial establishments. Examples of approved commercial suppliers and government-inspected symbols are above. Some foods from regulated farmers markets can be considered an approved source. So where did these oysters come from? Only pre-approved locations in the ocean are allowed to be harvested for shellfish. The harvester must identify the location, date, type, and quantity of shellfish removed from the sea. This tag must remain on the bushels of shellfish until they are used up and then retained by the establishment for 90 days thereafter. The 90-day retainer period is a result of the long incubation period, 15 to 50 days, and even longer duration of illness, 2 weeks to 3 months, for hepatitis A infection, which is not uncommon among those who consume raw or undercooked shellfish. Let's summarize. Reducing the incidence of foodborne illness in commercial establishments can be achieved by 1. Maintaining TCS foods at proper hot and cold temperatures. 2. Assuring TCS foods are fully cooked. 3. Assuring food service workers maintain a high level of personal hygiene. 4. properly cleaning and sanitizing food service equipment and utensils, and 5, verifying foods are from an approved source. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.